dinosaur. Oh, that's good. Kind of felt like that when I was running, but we are live. Lots of cool things going on. For tonight, we're going to talk about 5-liter Fords because I like them, but also because I want to know what else that maybe the next time I run 5-liter Ford on there, like what should we test? So I need to back up a little bit and talk about the test that we ran. This is probably my favorite series that I did of testing that I did on a 5-liter Ford. I've done a lot. I've done lots of camshafts, lots of cylinder heads. I did the whole 25 or 30 cylinder heads for Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords. Tested a lot of different intake manifolds and all the umpteen camshafts and all that, blowers and turbos and nitrous. Oh my! But when we ran this test, I built specifically a 302. It was just a late model. I say late model for hydraulic roller stuff, but for the 5-liter Ford, late model at the time, meaning it was a thin wall casting hydraulic roller block, a 302 HO motor, and then we put forged rods and forged pistons, and had a stock crank, and it had flat top pistons with valve release in it. So we could run, I don't know why we were thinking back then that the forged piston and rod thing was the way to go. And maybe a forged crank too. Oftentimes we did that. Not very often with 302 stuff. A lot of times though, when we did 347s or 325s, 331s, those kinds of strokers, a lot of times we put these steel cranks in them. And, honestly, I look back and think none of that was necessary. But we built this 302 and it was like a 30 over kind of deal. And I started out with the thing completely stock, which is what I like to do so that we know we have a starting point, that this is what guys have. And then this is where we're going to go to. So that's better information for people, right? Sometimes I start out with what I have, but in this case I said, okay, I want to have stock heads on it, stock camshaft, stock upper and lower intake manifold, stock throttle body. We didn't run a factory ECU and run the factory timing and all that. We could have done that. We even ran stock exhaust manifolds, and then later on we put headers on it. So we started out with, what a guy would get when he ran this thing stock. And then we went through a series of things, and along the way we tried a very popular back then, a GT40 intake manifold and a 65 millimeter throttle body. Again, throttle body matches the opening in the intake manifold. We tried long tube headers versus the stock exhaust manifolds. We may have even tried shorties also. We tried an extreme energy, the 274 cam, the 224, 232. So we had already had, and this is why when I go through this stuff, why a lot of times these things take a long time, you have to prep through all this. Otherwise, you have to stop what you're doing and figure out a way to solve a problem. So if we're putting an extreme energy 274 cam in it, we can't run that with stock valve springs in it. We have to have a valve spring upgrade. And so you have to science out a valve spring upgrade that works with the stock rockers and the stock valve installed height and all that. So you got to get that on the stock motor, on the stock heads. And then later on, we're going to put another set of heads on. So that head also has to be okay. The spring combination has to be okay for that camshaft. Usually that's not a problem on aftermarket heads. You put airflow research heads on, you put trick flow heads on. In this case, I think we put RHS heads on it. It was a function of the thing that we had that was at Westech at the time. And so we ran the camshaft with a stock head, which is, I think, a really good test, because I think a lot of guys would do that. Also, I think guys were putting a camshaft like that in might have GT40 heads or aluminum heads, a trick flow head, twisted wedge head, an airflow research 165 or 185. You can decide what the most normal combination would be. But also, the people that I'm going to get the comments from are the ones that have a combination that I didn't exactly test. Well, could you test this? And it's this color block, and it's all these things. So we tested all that. So we also did an upgrade on the cylinder heads. We put the ported RHS heads on it. We tried a different intake manifold instead of the GT40. We tried, this one was an extrude honed Holley Systemax intake manifold, and I think a 75 millimeter throttle body. And then we also ran NITROUS on this thing. And then we also put a single turbo on it. And we made up near 400 horsepower, let's say naturally aspirated. And then with the turbo, we went over 600 horsepower with not that much boost. There were some things that, and this thing just worked wonderfully. All the tuning was fine, and everything cooperated, and it always did well. It made the power. And we ran a Zex nitrous kit on it. We put 100 shot on it or something, and that worked exactly like we would want it to. And we ran this thing fuel injected and did all the tuning with it, and all of that worked out fine. And I think that we ran out of, I think I had 36-pound injectors in this thing, and then it's kind of what we ended up running out of fuel. And, you know, in retrospect, there's some things that I would change on this test sequence anyway. Obviously, we would put 80-pound injectors in it, or thousands like we have at richardholderperformance.com. And that's an interesting, just as a quick transition for a moment, I get asked a lot, okay, you're this store that you have, it's dedicated to LS stuff. It is, because the camshafts and things are LS specific. But there are a lot of things there that can be utilized for other combinations. Like the billet boost block works for anything that has forced induction on it, that you want more, you know, channels essentially for vacuum and or boost. That works good. So if you got a Vortec on a 5-liter or on a Toyota or on a Dodge Ram or whatever it is, that works. Same thing with the turbos. We sell lots of turbos, and the turbos that we have are sized for particular power levels, because remember, when you guys are asking questions about stuff, hey, what turbo should I use, or what cam should I use, or whatever, how much power do you want to make? That's the first question always. How much power do you want to make? And then we size the things accordingly. So these turbos will work on a K24, they'll work on a 2J, an RB, a Gen 3 Arc 7, which I would love to have, or an NSX. They will work on all of those. So we got 800 to 900 horsepower turbos and 1,000 horsepower turbos, and we're looking at things that are in between there. We just don't want to have 15 or 20 different turbos that we have to stock, that we don't want to micromanage all these turbos. Jimmy and I were talking about this today. We don't need a turbo. This one makes 25 more than this one, and this one makes 50 more than this one. And this, you know, that's not important. Just like with camshafts. Well, is the low buck truck camshaft the best cam that shaft has ever made? I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to say that it satisfies a vast majority of people out there that are driving around, particularly on street vehicles. And also for turbo things, you can make a bajillion horsepower with it, because the turbo ends up doing that. But at any rate, there's lots of things there. Injectors are the same thing. You can take these injectors, like these 50-pounders that we have on sale. I wish that I would have had those to run those on this 5-liter Ford, because they would have worked just fine. They would have gone right in. They would have plugged right into our harness. All of that would have worked fine. So a lot of those things, even though this is an LS specific thing, there are a lot of these things that interchange. So back to our 5-liter Ford test. On this 5-liter Ford test, there are a couple things that I wish I would have done differently. One, I wish I wouldn't have used, or in addition to using the RHS heads, I wish that I would have put airflow research heads on it. I also wish that I would have put a trick flow heads on it, because both of those are good heads. And both of those, especially back in the day, and maybe still are, were utilized a lot by performance 5-liter guys. And so it would have been, and I think RHS to a much lesser extent. They probably sold as many RHS heads in the lifetime for 5-liter Fords as trick flow or airflow research sold in like a week or a month or whatever. So it's just not, I don't think it was nearly as popular. So I wish that I would have done a different one. The other thing that I wish I would have done differently is the turbo that I use was a fairly small turbo. Again, it's one that we had laying around. I think it was a 72 millimeter. It was probably one of the ones that we had tried on the Honda. And I think that there were better choices for turbos that we could have used even back then. What we have now obviously is quite a bit better, but there were different turbos that we could have used, because we had a falling boost curve on this thing. And I think that we could have had a better choice for that. And if we would have had injector to be able to utilize additional power that we could have made more power, and it would have been, the kit was from HP Performance. It was a single turbo kit that they sell, and that thing's excellent. You know, I kind of wish that they were still around for the 5-liter stuff, but it had an air-to-air intercooler on it. It had tubular headers on it. It was overkill for what we were trying to do, you know, for what we were trying to get done, but it worked very well. And so we could have made, you know, a lot more power if we could have tried that. So my question is, knowing this, we did this testing, and knowing that I've done lots of other testing on intake manifolds and cylinder heads and camshafts and all that stuff for 5-liter Fords, what else would you guys like to see? Would you like to see more modern things? I mean, are there things now that I haven't tested? And I'm sure that there are. Are there things now that I haven't tested that you would like to see tested? Skip white heads or whatever, the airflow researcher enforcer heads, whatever the things are that you'd want to see. Are there different intake manifolds that are available now that weren't available then? I did exhaustive testing on, you know, GT40 style intake manifolds, the box manifolds, including the trick flow box R deal. I went through all of the trick flow stuff. You know, it was pretty exhaustive on running them naturally aspirated and under boost. And guess what? They do the same thing. The long runner, short runner thing was something that really got me going back in the day. I'm like, this is not a boosted manifold. It's not. Oh, yes, it is. This one's good for boost. I'm like, it's not. It's not good for boost. I had this argument so many times early on in the 5-liter Ford days, and then going into the Honda stuff too. It's the same thing. These like little fabricated manifolds that they had. Well, this one's good for boost. I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, yes, it is, but no, it's not. You don't have a manifold that's better than the stock manifold, particularly on a Honda, that's better for boost. They don't do that. That's not a thing. The manifold does what the manifold does, and it does it like it's RPM specific, and it still does that under boost. And so there's not one that's a boosted manifold. And the guys that were making manifolds would really get mad when I tell them that. Oh, this box manifold that you put on top of a GT40 or a factory 5-liter or a truck manifold, that's not a boosted manifold. The only thing that's going to happen is it's going to make power at a higher engine speed and lose a whole bunch of power down low. And were you running a turbo and not a centrifugal blower that has a predetermined like boost curve, that you're running a turbo, you're going to lose a bunch of response rate down low. No, this is good for this is good for boost. I want to shake you. But so let me know what kind of other tests that you guys would like to see for the turbo Ford. Obviously, I know Big Bang that's obviously has to come up. We got to split one of the blocks and find out what's going on there. I think we should try that. Take something and put ring gap in it and you know, put decent heads on it and a cam and so whatever kind of intake manifold, and then run it and see what happens and see where the block splits at. I mean, I've made a lot of power on the engine dyno, particularly with a rising boost curve offered by a centrifugal blower. We put a Paxton Novi on one and it made it into the 700s. And so it can make a lot of power. And I think that probably because of that rising boost curve, we don't have the torque, which I think is the thing that kills these. But you guys can let me know. But like I said, this particular test, like everything went smoothly and went great, and we got good dyno results. And you know, it's never perfect, but it was pretty close. This was a good motor, and just, you know, seemed like it wanted to cooperate. Near. Should I do a Big Bang block splitter test on a 5-liter Ford? The block splitter special. Near. Sergeant Yuri, what's going on? Rich, Neil's in the house early, man. Jordan, what's going on? I told Garrett that he should put you in the Crown Vic race. That's good. I am excited. I was watching some of their things, and he's doing a bunch of stuff with Dale Jr., which I just think is awesome. And he told Dale Jr. that they want to build a this is awesome. This may be my favorite thing, that he wants to build an aircraft carrier and land he's got a Piper Cub or something that he wants to land on it, because he does these competitions where they try to land in the shortest distance possible. So they're building a small version basically of an aircraft carrier. And then he said, we want to try to get this thing. He was thinking that this pontoon thing that they're building is going to be like 15 knots, and he wants to just come down and touch on it. And so Dale Jr.'s like, "Are you going to put the rope on it or the cable on it to stop?" He goes, "No, we're just going to touch down on it." And which I thought, this is it's just so awesome. Should I do a Gen 3 5-liter boosted for my wife, or a legendary clean SN95 Cobra, not a Terminator, also boosted? Either one of those is good. I myself, as much as I like the Coyote, in fact, I'm writing a story right now on Coyote stuff for the guys at Summit, but I would want a Terminator motor in there. A turbo one would be better, but still a Terminator one is kind of cool. And that's what I would like. Kyle Morris did a torque storm on an old school 5-liter. Yeah, we've done that. I've done that a bunch. We did that when I did the shootout between the 5-liter Ford and the 5-liter Chevy, the 302 versus the 305. And we ran them stock, and they ran them mildly modified with cams and things like that. And then we did more elaborate things with nitrous and bigger cams and bigger heads. And then we ran both of them with the torque storm on them. Project races are a good way to dispose of not good cars. Yeah, they're doing it Nissan Altima stuff too, and vans, I think, which is all that's good. 274 is a good cam. It is. 254, Neil up at 3 o'clock in the morning, man. Had the HE cam with the X heads. Could you test a Yugo with a G57 turbo? Where do I get a G57, and where do I get a running Yugo? Would you bother going all out on a cam? My 5.4 valve, I'm inspired by the Illuminator XS and Cosworth DX, and have a similar looking intake on my engine, Boss 290. I like those Boss 290s. I remember the first time I saw one, I got to test one of them, and they were pretty impressive. The guy had one. I think it might have been the guy from Sullivan that does those Sullivan intake manifolds. I think he had one that he loaned me for the test that we ran. Work GT40 intake, swapping to a carbon Victor was 30 plus. Yeah, maybe at the top. Boost block works on any engine that needs vacuum. Yep, vacuum or boost. That's a good thing. If an LS3 has a bad head, how much power would be lost by swapping to 243 heads? You can look. I have videos up that show 799 heads versus LY6 heads. But yeah, it did be 20 or 25 probably, depending on how much camshaft you have in the motor. The reason I'm wanting to do a cam upgrade is because to upgrade the oil pump, the chains need to come off. I'm just 12 bolts from taking the cams out. All right. You will definitely make more power on a 5.44 valve by putting aftermarket cams in it. TFS 11R 227 heads. I'm not familiar with those. See if you can weld troubled spots in a 5-liter block to keep it from splitting. So pre-weld them? I think that's probably going to weaken it, if anything. I'd like to see a Windsor run using LS parts, as many as easily set up, like coils and intakes. I don't know what LS parts will go on at Windsor. I mean coil packs, I guess, could. But we'd have to have a crank sensor and a cam sensor to make that work. I'd like to see comparisons run with very conservative cams, like maybe even more milder than stock versus moderate high phase ones in a turbo configuration. You want to put a cam that makes less power than stock? Less power than stock on a 5-liter Ford or on other kind of application? And why do you want to take power away from it with a turbo? The turbo isn't going to like a milder cam more. It's just going to make less power. It's going to make less power NA, and then it's going to make less power at any given boost level. Strain gauges on the block. I don't know if what that will tell you. I don't know where we would position those for the splitting. A carbon cub, is that what it is? Yeah. Curious about the new deep motor LS intake. It looks pretty decent. What's deep motor? Just my guess, the problem is lower end big torque numbers. G42 is definitely enough to break a 5 liter. If not, it had 5 degrees. Hey, what are you doing? We're talking about a 5 liter Ford block, not a Coyote one of 5 liter hydraulic roller, like an 88, 89, 90, 91, in that range. What upgrades would you do for gaining power on a daily 5.3 without creating daily problems? Currently got a BTR NSR cam, Trailblazer SS. You already have everything that you need. You could do a converter maybe, or gears. But the only thing you're left really for you to do is boost. I reckon you can land a Harrier in short distance. I just watched part of True Lies, the Arnold Schwarzenegger one, where they had the jump jets on it. That was cool. I've seen 2 split small Ford blocks, both the results of NITROUS. If you can't land with the cable, nailing the cable, I would imagine, is on a real aircraft carrier, especially with the waves moving up and down and stuff. That's probably a talent. Currently running 15 pounds on stock 5.3, 460 with no problem. How much lighter is a 4.8 aluminum LS? I've never seen or heard of an aluminum 4.8. My 5 liter has AFR 195s, an ECAM, Scorpion 182 rockers. That's interesting. I've not heard of those. Is a 228R cam good for an LQ4 T56 3,600 pound street car? For what are you trying to do? Do you want power to be higher in the rev range? Because a 228 cam is going to make power higher in the rev range. For more low RPM response. My guess is you're going to be really hard pressed to improve the low speed power of a stock cam, depending on which stock cam we're talking about. It's going to be hard to improve low speed power by going to a smaller cam. TFS 11R 227s are new. Wouldn't mind seeing how the whole series from 170 to 227 work on a 5 liter. We did the Dart ones. We did 175 or 170 or 175, 195, 210, and 225. So you can kind of get an idea from that. What makes them split? Shock loading or just reaching a certain torque number makes them split down the middle? I don't know. I've never had anybody tell me definitively what that is. I think it's torque production, but off topic. Results are in LQ4, Truck Norris, Springs, Trailblazer SS, LS throttle body, drive-by-wire. What is the question? Less than a stock 5 liter cam wouldn't be hard to do. Yeah, there's other stock cams that are less than a 5 liter HO cam. But again, I don't know that you're going to pick up power down low. Oh, Brad, 424, 500 foot-pounds. Is that at the tire? Because that seems like a weird combination of horsepower and torque. That seems like a torque converter thing. Better lower RPM response, but horsepower can be got by increasing the boost on the top. Yeah, that's probably not going to work. The camshaft is going to have going smaller than stock on these cams. Like if we look at an LS, like an LM7 or something, going smaller than that on the cam is probably not going to improve boost response. Mexico block. No, the production 5 liter blocks are not Mexico blocks. What machine shop do you use? Is everything done at Westech? Westech is not a machine shop. They're an engine dyno place and chassis dyno place. Modified Cubs can stop pretty short. Yeah, I've seen some of can stop as short as a Harrier. Nitrous can break a lot of things, especially if you don't retard the timing. 243 heads. Yeah, no, that's it. That 228 cam, if that's what this is about, will make good power on the top. It's not going to idle that great, and the low speed power won't be great, but it'll be good on the top. Is boost reliable for a daily driver? Yes, there's lots of people running daily drivers. I've seen the Torque Storm supercharger kits and thought about it, but always was worried about creating problems for myself. Haven't done a ton of research. Christian, it's that all of that is not a function of the boost. It's a function of the tune. If you get the tune right, obviously they have production supercharged and production turbocharged vehicles that run for hundreds of thousands of miles. So as long as the tune is right, you're all good. I know stock cams on a Boss 260 are the same numbers as the 5.4 valve, but on a 4V head, the Boss 290 is higher lift from those, and the Boss 315 is even higher lift again. Yeah, the lift is not what I would choose to make power gains, but capwalk is a big problem for breaking the 5-liter. Might want to do rods and pistons if you want to try and split the block. I don't think that that's the case. I think guys are splitting blocks with stock stuff. And if we did a big bang, it would have all the stock stuff in it. All-wheel drive dyno. Is this a, Brad, is this an automatic? David Visor on his YouTube channel said that block splits because of harmonics. Bill, honestly, I don't think he should get a G42. I think he should get a 3584, because I don't think he's going to want more than about 7 pounds. (2001) Sierra. Yeah, the torque number and the horsepower number, that's the way that those work. That's probably converter. Is the Explorer block better than the Mustang? I don't know that. Are all the blocks equal? Is there a high nickel block? Yeah, the Mexico block people want, but that's not I don't think that that's even a hydraulic roller block. I think that's an early 302 block. I understand lift increases power of the whole RPM range, but at the expense of valve spring reliability, but you need a whole bunch of lift to make decent more power versus more duration. Yeah, I don't see that as an absolute thing. Like when we did the test with the NSR cam versus the standard version of the truck Norris, the gains kind of increased with engine speed in kind of the way that like head porting works. But that's the only time I remember, other than doing rockers. And even on rockers, I thought that the gains are kind of increased with engine speed. I've seen belts thrown due to harmonics. Was an issue with the RC Dev Evo until extra idler was added. I've seen belts get pitched too. And frequencies are an amazing thing. I've been watching some stuff on them using frequencies to do all kinds of things, and it's pretty impressive. Frequencies can move the world. Just have to have the right one. Should I do a big bang block splitter test on a 5-liter Ford? Who is that? Who is that 14% that doesn't want that to happen? The block splitter special. At some point, Trick Flow made heads with only numbers stamped in them. I have small block Ford high ports. Are the old ported but bare high ports worth a complete rebuild versus a new set? Been watching the shootouts. Yeah, the high ports are really good, and for a long time, guys swore by the high ports, especially the guys that were doing Bennett and those guys that were doing ported versions of those. The high ports that I had were the old TFS KPI high ports. That was when they first came out, and mine were just as cast, but ported versions should work really well. And I've seen numbers go a good bit over 300. The ones that did the best on the test were the trick flow TFSR heads. Have you done a big bang on a 462 valve? I have not, but I would like to. 3 hertz magnetic field moves your blood. Yeah, the frequency stuff is pretty impressive. That's how the Flash, when he vibrates through walls, that's how he does it. It's amazing. There's talk that they think that might be how they move lots of the stuff for the pyramids. And the stuff that's under the pyramids, which is even more amazing than the pyramids themselves. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty gangster. Big bang at 12A or 13B. No, I don't think I would do a big bang on a rotary. I would just like to run some rotary stuff. I'd like to see a good Hemi G4 played around with turbo and stuff, missing Hemi content. I have Gen 3 stuff up there, which is technically these are all still Gen 3s. I called them Gen 4s, but I have lots of Hemi stuff up there. I wrote a book on Hemi stuff, so I've done lots of testing with those, but not any of the Eagle or Apache stuff. Is it going to be a big difference, performance difference, if you're using an NSR truck Norris instead of the cam made for boost? For daily, would supercharger be better for me than turbo? No. Your truck Norris cam is a really good cam, and then you're adding to that really good cam. You're adding a supercharger. If you're talking about a torque storm, has a rising boost curve, it's going to do what it does. Or a turbo, that is a good, fairly good low-speed power camshaft, meaning that it has good low-speed torque production. So the turbo response will be good. We've run turbos with those cams a lot, and they work really well. Other cams, like turbo-specific cams, are not going to be the way to go because almost all those are going to be bigger cams, and you don't want to do that. Flash is also good at cleaning ovens. If you don't have it in the US, it's a heavy-duty cleaning fluid. Okay. We have Easy Off. Coyote Big Bang. Is the big 455 coming back? I don't know. Live chat? Yeah, this is a live chat. Any more 4200 content? I think I'm going to ship that all off to Calvin. I'd like to see a big bang on Honda stuff. The K24 is scheduled for a big bang. I'd like to watch videos with you making intake manifolds. Me making the intake manifolds is me. Somebody else does the welding on the aluminum stuff. What I do is just tell them what I need, the tubing and the stuff, and then I always make them adjustable so that I can test them and see where we would want to be. I like that equivalence to head porting. It makes sense that it has that effect. The valve isn't blocking the port as much. I'm sure there's diminishing results. Yeah, I just think at higher engine speeds that at low engine speeds, more lift, it's just not going to be restrictive there. The restriction there of having a lower lift would be less at engine speed, just like having a throttle body size or that. Utah, what's going on? There is an inventor in Africa creating electricity from frequency technology. That would go over well here. I think it's awesome. If I like that kind of technology. Aluminum welding is an art. That's right. 455 or 500 Cadillac with custom intake. Yeah, I'm not going to do a custom intake for either one of those because those are more difficult because they have water passages. And most of the stuff that I've done on intake manifolds are not provisions for water. I saw a sleeve set to make a 5.3 into a 454, lots of bore and 425 stroke. Yeah, if you sleeve a block, you can do. We did a 5.7 block, but it would be the same. We did an LS6 block, and we made a 468 out of it. That was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something now. I'll do more research and contemplating. Going to finish all my NA mods first and save for boost later. You ever seen a Ferrari intake with movable intake stacks? Are you talking about a production one? Ferrari's really good on their intake manifolds. All of them. They're 430, they're 360, and they're what is it? Is it 455? Is 360, 430, 455, I think. All of those are really good. How long are LS plastic lifter trays good for? Mine has 350,000 miles on it. Richard operates the whip. No, I just tell them, look, it needs to be this. I want this flange, and it needs to be like this, and then I need this injector angle, and then usually I have to tell them that, and I usually do this. I swedge the runner, because we have to transition the runner from a round 2, which is almost all the things that I start out with, to whatever opening the port is on usually some kind of oval section. So we've got to smash that down a little bit to make that work. Having seen the Cummins new gas engine, I have seen that. It's very cool. Cleveland or 400M. Is Chad coming back on? I'm sure Chad would if I asked him. I have Evan Perkins is coming on. We're going to talk about his Ram Air 5 Pontiac that he ran at West Tech recently. Ferrari does their homework. That's how they cheated with the fuel flow meters. Yeah. House lifter trays get quality AC Delco ones. Are cheap. The OEM trays are the way to, if you're going to replace something, don't go get eBay stuff. Get dealership stuff or the BTR stuff. Yeah, Chad's cool. Chad's a lot of fun to hang around. He's good people. Still 86 and 14. Camera recommendations for an LV3 4.6. I don't know that you have a lot to choose from. Do you have a lot of different things to choose from? And then what are you trying to do with it? LNR, Derek. Yeah, I like Derek. I've done stuff with Derek for a really, really long time. Link bar lifters are cool, but won't save an engine from lifter failure. No, the link bar lifters are that's just the guide portion, but I wouldn't put link bar lifters in an LS because they didn't trust factory lifter trays. I would just, if the motor has 200 or 300 or 400,000 miles or whatever on it, you take it apart, you should put new lifter trays in. It's like $25. It's cheap. Just change them, because if it rotates, bad things are going to happen. I know, because I bought a motor from the wrecking yard where that had happened. This, I want to put a turbo on it. Okay, like I said, I don't think you have a lot of choices for those. You could run it with, it makes pretty good power even with a stock cam. I think BTR did a Truck Norris style cam for that. I think that they have one for that LV3. So you certainly could use that. What lifters do you prefer, LS6 or LS7? We run the LS7 lifters. That's the ones that we sell on the store. Bad lifter tray, flat debit cam. Yeah, ours rotated and it just destroys the cam lobe, and then also destroys the lifter, and then also deposits a bunch of material into the motors, none of which is good. That particular motor had, and I'm sure you guys will remember, had a bunch of problems with it. It had, the guy had broken the rocker bolt, and so the rocker, he tried to glue it on. Another one was not working because the push rods were bent on the other side. Those ports were just filled with carbon deposits, like filled. I mean, the combustion chamber was filled with that, and the ports were filled. I'm like, how does it get that much buildup in there? And it was amazing. I've never seen anything like that. It's the first LS motor that I've seen like that. Cam choice, 5-liter F100 manual daily driver, ported heads, Edelbrock RPM 600 CFM. If this is a hydraulic roller block, a factory HO camshaft would work really good, or one of the smaller comp ones, or one of the, whatever the smallest Summit, if you're doing a hydraulic roller, one of the smallest Summit hydraulic roller forward cams that they have, their alphabet cams. Not a B, probably an E. Big Bang on a 400M, nah, not that interested in that. I watched a video from Brand Racing in Oklahoma on engine balancing and different twists than the norm. He discussed theories and balance percentages and when to change it. That's interesting stuff. The problem with that is I don't normally see, like I see lots of opinions about static balancing and dynamic balancing. And then do you balance at this RPM or this RPM or this RPM? And then what are the attending frequencies? And people can talk very intelligently about a lot of that stuff. What I don't see is any test data to correlate with what the discussion is. And the reason that you don't see that is because it's darn near impossible to test the things that we're talking about when we're talking about balance problems. I can tell you that if you put a 50-ounce balancer on a 28-ounce or a neutral balance small block Ford, it wants to shake the motor to death. What are you benching now? Actually, interestingly enough, not the benching part of it, but I got motivated to do running again. So I went out today and did my first baseline for like a mile to see what I would do a mile in. Now, I didn't do it. And again, this is where all the testing comes in, because this is how my mind works. In fact, I already have a log of all of these things, and I have all of these things I check off, like, okay, what was the time? What was the temperature when you did it? Like, what time of day was it? What did I eat the day before, which is important? What did I do the first half? If I ran a mile for time, what was the pace for the first half mile, and then the second half mile? Because they definitely changed. Because did I do a warm up? Because before you go run, especially as you get older, before you go run, you definitely need to warm up. Like, you need to go out and run a half mile before you could then run a mile, especially if you're trying to run, reasonably fast, let's say. And then, so you want to see, did you negative split? And it's all just nothing but data. And the goal is to get to back somewhere near where I used to be. So we'll see how all that works. How about a 5-liter Cleavor turbo build? I've done a Cleavor in the past. I did a 408 Cleavor with CHI 3V heads on it. It worked really good. 4.8 from 5 years ago. It probably was that long ago. David might be right about the harmonic splitting the 5-liter block. Yeah, that's an opinion that David has, but that's an opinion that David has. Maybe he connected the injectors on those cylinders. Maybe. Have you seen the link bar lifters with the spring on the link bar? It lets you pull the rockers, spin the cam, and lift the lifters off the cam for cam swaps on non-LS. I haven't seen them with springs on them. Another great thing about E85, low carbon and cleans nicely. It really is. The E85 stuff is really nice. It's not dirty at all. Because and especially the gas that we have here in California, the 91. If you look at a spark plug after running 91, and let's say you're running a naturally aspirated motor and it's 12.5 to 1 or 12.8 or whatever at wide open throttle, and you take a look at the plug, you're like, that plug's got, it looks like it's pig rich. It's all black, but it's not, because it's rich. It's deposits. It looks terrible. I remember Brian Tooley coming out and looking at these. He said, "This thing's rich." I said, "Well, you see what the airfield meter says, right?" "Yeah, but that can't be right. Look at the plug." I said, "No, it's right." I said, "You're used to looking at a nice tan color or whatever from having good fuel where you're testing, but that's not this. Every spark plug that you take out of here will look like this. This is not, it's not burning oil. It's not 8 to 1. I said, because if it was depositing on this because it's super rich, I said, we'd see that. You can see the exhaust coming out of when it's running on the dyno. I said, if it was running 8 to 1, we would be able to see that. It's very evident. But that's not it. It's terrible gas. And E85 doesn't do that. It's much better. My knees are too cooked for running, hiking. land speed running. Trial and error, then endurance racing testing could maybe duplicate some on a water brake dyno if it will sustain wide open throttle for 1 hour. They can do that. It's hard on the dyno and stuff. It's hard mostly on the cooling system that has to go through that. Springs below the lifters let you change the cam without pulling the intake. Springs on top of the lifters are called rev kits. Yeah, I've seen the rev kits. I just didn't know the ones underneath it. Baseline for your mile. Yeah, that's how you got to do it. I got to know where I'm starting, because to know where I get to. If I start working out, every day, let's say right now, and I test myself in 2 weeks, I don't know, or a week or two or a month or whenever it is, I don't know if I have improved. You got to get a baseline before we, that's why we start, when we run these motors, we run a stock one, and then we put a camshaft in it. If we just put a camshaft in it, we're like, yeah, but is that good? Is that bad? We don't know if it's good or bad. I'm in no shape to work out. What is a block splitter test? That's where we do a big bang on it until we split the block. Bought my lifters and trays from Summit. They said made in the USA. Hope they work. Wish I had known you were going to be selling them in a month. Sure you have an opinion on decapping injectors, but don't know what I've heard it yet. Yeah, we've run decap injectors and they can work. We'll tell you the same thing that we say every time that this topic comes up, and that's that you can't get, if you decap 8 of them, you won't get 8 that flow the same. All right, no, we'll see you. You won't get 8 that flow the same, because when you decap them, it's not precise. So you have to do a bunch of them, put them on a flow machine, test them, and get the ones that are all comparable. And then normally when we test them, are they all comparable for static flow? But then are they comparable for, scaled flow? Maybe, maybe not. I ran a mile on someone else's shoes once. Result, I got free shoes and they got sore feet walking home. I have a stock bottom N302, aluminum heads, E-cam, single plane, on-3 turbo, 450 horsepower. Makes for a fun fox bite. That'd be good. 5-minute mile. No, my days of 5-minute mile stuff is way behind me. I would guess cylinder pressure cracks blocks. Sergeant, I think it's torque. I think it's cylinder pressure, but I have also seen people split blocks that were road racing them, and they were naturally aspirated, and they couldn't been making more than 400 horsepower or something. So, but they were running it at higher engine speeds. I'd like to see more pictures of your old project cars on the channel. I put 98 in my 9.5 to 1 inline 6, but it stops me from running the engine with trash fuel. Full alkalite is nice. Can't know 2 sensors trick you if you go too far one way or the other. I've never seen, we've once they go down below 8 to 1, they probably aren't reading as accurate. The thing that can happen if you get misfire because it's too rich, that can throw the sensor off. I was looking at my friend's Dart Little M 400 small block Chevy tall deck. Wow, this is also raised cam tunnel closed a few days ago. There's no oil return holes drilled in any of the lifter valley. Solid iron except for 16 lifter bores. Where does the oil drain? Springs under lifters are really lightweight springs. They only need to lift up the lifter after you take out the push rod. Yeah, no, I could see that. What is there some sort of guide or something that holds the spring in place when it's not being activated? Because I'm assuming that you're taking the rocker and the push rod, you're taking the load off that spring, and it just pushes the lifter up, and that's a genius design. But what keeps that spring in place? Is there a cup or something? Is there a receiver on the lifter guide bar? The guy who broke 2 hours on the marathon distance was averaging 413 miles. Oh, I know. The marathon runners are just amazing. The speed that they're running is really fast sprinter speed, and they're doing it for 26 miles. Who doesn't want to see what every motor is capable of? Big bang tests are the best. Good for you getting back out running again. Never too much data, even for running. Yep. And I used to have, when we lived at the other house, pre-COVID and stuff, I had like a heart rate monitor and a GPS and all that stuff. Oh, not because I was a serious runner, just because I loved the data and I loved having all that information. Roger Bannister or Frank Shorter. Timing is still the destructive thing you can put in a motor. Remember, a guy kept breaking 351 Cleveland blocks above 6,500 until he filled the blocks. Dan, what did you guys see? Did you guys ran Cleveland blocks? Didn't you? My fastest 5 mile is 30 minutes. That's that. You did 6-minute miles for 5 miles. That's fast. Do you have Ford 300 data? I do not. I have to determine that, Richard, to figure out where to return the Dart little M oil from the top end. Don't feel good about hand drilled on $5,500. No, I agree. I wondered, does he have, when they bring it all up to the valve cover, does he have feeds coming out of the valve cover to return it back to? Because I've seen that too. What makes California gas so bad? I'm an East Coast guy and we have a maximum 10% ethanol. It might be the ethanol content. I don't understand why it would be bad. I mean, the refinery's right here, and the big tankers, they literally drive up right here. I thought if you go way far lean, it would start to read rich, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know that that's the case. I haven't seen that be the case. I've seen it get wonky when you have misfire. What's your guess when the 302 will blow? I don't know. Like I said, I've run over 700 on a centrifugal blower. I don't think I've ever gone anywhere near that on the turbo stuff. I think that this 650 or so was where I've been with the turbo stuff. When I did the test with Jimmy at HP, we did a stock one and put a turbo on it, and the car went 1090s or something. And then we did heads, cam, and intake, and we did it naturally aspirated and we did it turbocharged. But when he did the heads, cam, and intake manifold and then ran the same boost, that's when the block split. So I'm thinking that was probably 700 or more at the tire. My best was 15 miles in an hour and 40 minutes. That's really fast. You do that maybe, Richard, but they're expensive Brodix heads of 410 sprint car stuff. That stuff makes lots of power. The sprint car motors are amazing. They do crack between the main and cam journal. The 5-liter blocks, split up. They split up from the top of the mains up into the cam journal. It's the additives in the California gas. I would guess, yeah. If AFR heads say max RPM is 6,500, what's a safe cutoff RPM so I don't get valve float? Well, the 6,500 RPM, the heads and the spring package can't really dictate that. They can't be the sole gatekeeper of RPM, because a lot of that is going to be a function of the camshaft. So if you have a super aggressive cam profile, it could be lower than that. If you have a really safe, stable cam profile, it could be more than that. So I don't know that that's how to set your rev limiter. I would decide on your rev limiter based on what the power output, what the power curve looks like. I wish we had E85 here in Washington. I got a message from somebody selling another Sprint. This is what happens. It rains, it pours. I just didn't do a 30-minute 5 mile. I trained for it. Were you young when you did that, because a 6-minute mile by itself is fast. And then 5 of those is really fast. Also like to see how much farther a zero balance rotating assembly will go than a 50 ounce. Yeah, that wouldn't be a 5-liter assembly. Then it would be something different. But yeah, I wonder if that's part of it. 50 ounces is a lot of imbalance. Because we don't really hear about the, and this is the whole, and we see this all the time on political nonsense where people are don't know the difference between correlation and causation. But we don't see the earlier 302 blocks splitting that are 28 ounce, but they're also different blocks. They're not thin wall cast late model production hydraulic roller blocks. So you're changing multiple things. I have a younger talented machinist friend. He turned 245 Pontiac crankshafts, all 6 counterweights, 125 off of each for my ultra lightweight bob weight, at least for the Pontiac V8 world. Did he cut them off, or did he knife edge them? What did he do, BNR? Don't you want a fully counterweighted crank? I thought that was the hot setup for race motors. Trying to get the Pontiac to zing, to get the lightweight revs. I was 24, fell down a hill on a hike for work, and that was the end of my knee. But both are not great. Yeah, it's wonderful to be in your 20s. Go out and just, and even young, when I was young, even in grammar school, I was always a really good runner, but that's all that I did. I mean, not just running, but everywhere that we went, we walked or ran, and we would go up in the hills, and we'd be gone the whole time. As soon as you woke up in the morning, you would go find your buddies, and we'd be gone for the whole day till the streetlights came on. That's when you would come back, particularly during the summer. And so we'd be up, what people think now is hiking or working out or whatever. We would be doing that all the time. And then whenever I can remember growing up having the presidential physical fitness test and stuff. And for me, it was always like, I was always competitive. So I wanted to be the best one in the school. So, we would go out and try to do the most pull-ups and the farthest run. And the thing that I remember my mom always brings it up is what I didn't have was, like, we had to do a standing broad jump. And so I didn't have broad jump like talent or leg strength. And so what I did was, when they announced this, they announced what the amount that you had to hit to get this presidential physical fitness patch. And I couldn't broad jump that amount. And so what I did for the next, it was like 3 weeks or whatever, a month that they told us ahead of time. And so I was just broad jumping everywhere I went, just working out, trying to get talent and get strength. And, you just got to do what you got to do, man. In the Marine Corps, I had guys in my unit running low 16, 3 miles. May have gotten lower. You're going to use your favorite 224, 230 cam with a 302. I don't know. I don't have any more of those. I don't think it makes any difference what the cam is for a big bang thing. Most are actually cam ground. The counterweight stock 455 is 2280 grams. Mine 2009. So you got rid of 271 grams. We tested a flat plane engine. I've not run one on the engine dyno. I've seen them run on the chassis dyno, like the Ford Mustang ones. Ran it by Don. It was live a few weeks ago. you ever do 289 with big heads intake for RPM? I haven't. Do you think that a 289 will be higher RPM because of the stroke or something? Cleavor 4V 289. I think a Cleveland head would be awful to put on a 289. First time caller. When is a good time to ask LT questions? I feel like it's off topic. No, this is open mic night. Every night is open mic night. So you can ask whatever question that you want during the question and answer period. It doesn't matter. You want to ask about Bigfoot? We'll talk about Bigfoot, UFOs, whatever you want to talk about. You can ask whatever question you want. We kind of need to put transducers inside of a V8, record all the frequencies during a dyno pull. I think you'd have to do a lot of different, if you want to catch all of the frequencies. I think that there's a whole bunch involved in there. We only got 1 or 2 minutes left, so hurry up and get your question in. Bruno and Brady are doing good after their surgery. They're back to their old selves. Sorry, I saw your video about a Gen 5 heads on the 5.3L-S. I have an L83 core with a C's lifter. Okay. And an LM7 block. I'll tell you that I think that that's a terrible idea. And that I did that video because the guys at Brian Julie Racing did that. But you have to essentially change everything. If you have an LM7, you put those heads on, but you have to have a completely different cam. You have to have an LT intake. You have to have LT headers, LT rockers, LT push rods, and then the front accessory drive that you don't have anything that matches now because you got a block that's LS, and then the heads that are LT. The LT accessory drive is not going to bolt to that. Neither is the LS stuff. And you don't get like an L83 head. It's not going to be better than an aftermarket 5.3 head or reported 5.3 head. It's better than a stock one. I just don't think that the expense and complexity is enough to justify doing it. Doesn't most want to spin the small engines high? Are you talking about the 289? But stroke doesn't determine RPM potential. That's the thing that I keep going over, is that's all valve train. So the stroke doesn't do that. That's not, you have to turn it high to get it to make power because it's small displacement. And that's the either benefit or downside to having less displacement. Remember having a 23-pound small block Chevy crank and sub 350 gram pistons. Didn't go any faster in short track on a 3,400-pound car. Yeah, I mean, it's free revs nicely when you do stuff like that. Could we use pistons from the Gen 5? I don't know if the compression height is the same in the rod and all that. I don't know. For the money, turbo big block would you go Ford or Chevy aiming for 700 horsepower? I think that'd be more of a function of what you're trying to, what car you're putting it into. 700 horsepower is really easy with either one of those. It's easy with a 4.8 or a 5.3 or whatever LS. It's easy. 700 horsepower with a turbo is easy with a lot of stuff. Would a UFO spinning type need to be well balanced? Yeah, they do need to be well balanced, but I don't think that they spin for balance. I think that that's just for show, because I think that they're either frequency driven or they're anti-gravity things. So I don't think that I think that they do technically defy physics because we don't have gravity acting on us. Otherwise, when we accelerate really fast, our people inside would turn to strawberry jam, and that's not good. I miss everything. Yeah, that's good. Kelly, Richard, long time no talk. Getting ready to start ordering rods, pistons, cam. Looking at mirror image precision turbos for the 6-liter. What power level do you want? Actually, somebody just ordered mirror image turbos through Jimmy from our store. So he's getting some mirror image 3584s. So if you're trying to do 1,000+ horsepower or whatever, that's an option for mirror image turbos. The precision stuff I like, that does a good job. I don't know how much. I would just, the first question always is how much power you're trying to make, and then we just go from there. Transducer would be good to see what the magnitude and frequencies. If it breaks a block, breaks not from a piston flying free from the crank. Yeah, it could give you maybe an indicator. I don't know that it's going to definitively tell you that. Because if we have a frequency and the block breaks, unless you repeat that with that frequency or generate that frequency without the other things happening, like the load, the cylinder pressure and stuff, and then it breaks the block, you can go, that's starting to get definitive. But if it doesn't do anything or it doesn't repeat the next time, what really was it? And did the frequency just hurt that block because it had slightly less thickness? If you had to say what crack stock 5.0 blocks, only pick one. I've said it a bunch of times already. I think it's load. I think it's torque. Keith, thank you very much. Cylinder pressure trying to push the block away from the piston stroke. So instead of lifting heads, it lifts the block. Iron LS1 is a good thing. 5.3's board to 5.7. Add max cam. That's what you like, Utah? Think that all the Ford racing cylinder heads are holding their crate motors back? Do you mean the small block Ford ones, like 351s and stuff? I don't think that. I'd have to look at the flow rates of those heads that you're talking about, which ones specifically that you're talking about. But my guess is that all of the things are holding it back. I don't think that they have the very best intake manifold on it. If what you're looking for is max power, I also don't think that they have the biggest camshaft in there that would allow max power. They also don't have the compression in there that would allow max power, or the valve train, or a dry sump system, or any of those things. What nitrous jets should be used with a flex fuel car? Sometimes fill with E85, unknown percentage, and sometimes fill with gas. Should R85 jets be used and run a little richer? Well, that would be the safer way to do it, probably. Too bad Ford neutered the 400M. It would have been a Chevy killer with Cleveland spec heads. Oh, with Cleveland specs. It had Cleveland heads on it. It just didn't have a good intake manifold, and it didn't have compression, and it didn't have a 4V head on it, and it didn't have a camshaft. If they had the energy to displace themselves across the cosmos, a spinning thingy that looks cool wouldn't be a big deal. I think it always is a big deal. I think that that aliens would want to impress alien chicks. It's just me. Brought home an 0.8L9262 from the Pick and Pull. Nice. You get a camshaft and springs for it, is what you should do, Ron. 400 Fords have a 658 rod, but they're heavy. Yeah, they have a really tall deck height. BTR stage 2 twin turbo cam, BTR head rods, Wesco pistons, all that's good stuff. More small block Chevy 400 stuff coming. Small block Chevy 400 stuff is definitely coming, not the Ford though. Talking about space travel? No, not space travel. We're talking about when they're already here and they're just cruising Earth. Guys are using anti-seize now on the block to main caps to minimize fretting. Are they doing it so that they don't have cap galling or whatever? Fretting, is that the word? Looking for quick spooling on the street. We'll tune on E85. That's right, alien chicks. Just like on what was the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Somebody tell me. 850 wheel horsepower. Okay. Yeah, the 3584s would definitely do that, but your Precisions will do that. What do you think of the Harrop TVS blower? I like the Harrop stuff. I think that they do a good job. Hey, doggies. Stop micro welding. Yeah. Total Recall. That's what it is. We all know. We all know what we're talking about. We see. That's why the saucers are chrome. That's it. Exactly. They're all polished. They're essentially spinners when you think about it. Fast, easy EFI or Terminator X. I go Terminator X. Yep. I've only got 2 hands. That's it. What have you been feeding this thing? Blondes. See, it doesn't change. It does not change. Total Recall. That's it. And on that note, guess what? See, it's an hour, actually an hour and 10 minutes. It's already gone by because we have so much fun talking about 5-liter stuff. Xenomorph. That's right. She's not quite the hottie. She's a little problematic. It's another bug hunt. Did Holly start making a Q-jet? I don't know. I'm putting a timing cover on my Ellis on my first engine. Can I use ultra gray or black to seal threads? Yes, but what are you on an LS engine? Are you putting what motor are you putting it on? That will have to wait till later.